This is Reg McDaniel, and welcome to the Emergency Preparation and Cooking Show. In this episode today, we're going to meet with the author of a book called A Sense of Survival, written by Alan J. South.
Hang it. Two, one.
Hi, this is Reg McDaniel, and welcome to the Emergency Preparation and Cooking Show. In today's episode, we're going to be talking and meeting with a really good friend of mine that I've known for years, J. Alan South, who wrote the book, The Sense of Survival. And when you purchase this book, which you can get, we'll show you at the end of this interview where you can get that, I would encourage you to read the introduction. It's one of the most worthwhile introductions I've ever read, and it'll really give you a sense of, you know, is that right? There's the likely possibilities that has the story.
It's the introduction. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm all right on that. Cut out that part. Anyway, the introduction. It really gives you a sense of what you would go through if there was a power outage, an earthquake, a tornado, that kind of event, and really brings you down to the possibilities that most people don't think about. Can really change your life just reading that two and a half page introduction. Well, here's Alan now, and Alan, tell us about what inspired you to write The Sense of Survival.
Well, Reg, thank you for that introduction. Mostly I wanted a book that would embody the things that I wanted to know about myself, and also that would capture my experience and have it all in one book instead of a whole library. I had a whole library full of books and a lot of experience, and I wanted to capture that in a way that it would just be in one volume. And that's what I tried to do in The Sense of Survival.
Well, one thing I noticed about your book is if anyone's ever had or read a Boy Scouts of America handbook, there's a lot of showing you how to and very specifics and the whys and all of that. In Alan's book, he goes through great detail on many subjects, showing diagrams and explaining exactly the whys of the different subjects. Let's give you an example. In the very first section of your book, you talk about the possibility of a nuclear bomb going off somewhere here in the United States, whether it's one or two or across the nation, showing pictures of targets and stuff. But what really impressed me is you talk about what radiation is and what it affects. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, Reg, one of the things that I'm aware of, not only at the time that I was aware of at the time I wrote the book, but currently, is that people with just a little bit of information can make such a difference in how they survive. Many people say if we have a nuclear war or some kind of a nuclear event that takes place that impacts me, just let it start with me and then I won't worry about it. But the fact of the matter is that if you have a little bit of knowledge and some equipment and you prepare yourself, it can make all the difference in how you survive an event like that. And radiation is only one of the things that we deal with a blast. It's actually fairly complex, but it can be boiled down into a few simple steps that we need to take. Radiation is attenuated or stopped by mass. You have to have mass, at least the radiation that we have from fallout, which would be the most abundant thing to deal with in any kind of such event. And we need mass between us and the fallout. And so we need to make preparations for that. There are some other issues such as radioactive iodine is in the air when there's a nuclear blast that can impact especially children, but people of all ages, because it goes to the thyroid and can cause cancer of the thyroid and other organs. So anyway, there's a few basic issues that we need to deal with in connection with the nuclear war. I've tried to put those into the book in a condensed form and a readable form so that people can understand it and benefit from it.
Well, one of the things I remember reading the book, which I've read twice, by the way, because it's such a good book and a good reference manual to have, is that radiation affects things like our immune system, our bone marrow, and we're thinking that, you know, we don't really know how it affects us and what organs, if any, it affects, or if it affects your skin or whatever. And the other thing is, there's always survivors of a nuclear blast. There always has been, always will be. The question you need to ask yourself is, do you want to be a survivor that's sick, dying, has wounds and open sores on their body, or do you want to be a survivor that was prepared and knew how to eliminate the radiation from their lives and things like that? This is not a gloom and doom book about, well, this may happen because of this incident or anything like that. Nothing like that at all. It's very down to matter of fact of, this is what radiation is, this is what the bomb does. There's up in the air explosions, there's ground level explosions, there's below ground level explosions, and what they affect and how they affect people, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, let's cover another subject real quick. One of the things in here is that really impressed me was your basics of food storage and how to store food, and you have some recipes in here too. Is that right?
We do. Yes. The bottom line of everything is you have to eat every day. You have to drink and you have to eat. And one of the things that we've seen over the last few years is that many of the events that we're seeing, the number of disasters has increased a lot over the last 10 or 15 years that we see around the world. And so some of the events may not, it may not just be a few hours where there's a little inconvenience for us, but there may be something that's life-threatening and also that will change our lives forever. The people who were involved in the large hurricanes, people lost their houses, people lost all of their possessions, and some of them didn't have food coming the next day or in 72 hours. We've advertised for years people have about a 72-hour kit. And you'll notice in my book that I don't talk about a 72-hour kit, but a 14-day emergency kit.
Yeah, I noticed that, and what really impressed me was if you just add a few things, not a ton of things, but a few more things to a standard 72-hour kit, you can turn it into a 14-day kit quite easily without adding an immense amount of weight, or fatigue and getting, if you have to evacuate or something like that. Is that correct?
That's correct. You have to drink clean water, and you also have to eat. One of the things that we really have to acknowledge is the fact that waterborne disease is the largest killer of mankind on Earth. And if you're not prepared to either have water stored that's clean and disease-free, or have the ability to create that through filtration or other methods of making it safe, that's what happens. Around the world, historically, thousands die in the disaster, and then tens of thousands die of waterborne disease following the disaster. And that still continues today. It's a huge issue. And it happens almost instantly from the moment something happens. An earthquake, a war, a hurricane, typhoon, any of these events which interrupt the normal course of the refinements of society, then we have waterborne disease, and it kills people, makes us sick. And,
well, one thing in your book that the viewers need to know about is in the water purification chapter, you don't cover one or two ways to purify water. You cover several different ways, as many as you can cram in there, so that you're not bound by just an idea or two, but you have a multiplicity of different methods of purifying water, correct?
That's correct.
Also, I noticed one of the subjects in your book is gardening, and how to do with just a little bit of lumber, a hammer, and nails, which would be readily available, to make a little kind of greenhouse to sprout your seeds, and how to do a garden and things like that, right?
Right, Reg. Think about what it had in the first place. Growing your own vegetables and fruits is such a fruitful activity. They're nutritious, they're delicious, and they're the fruits of our own labor. And it's really a great practice to garden ourselves. In addition to that, think what would happen if, we don't like to think in these terms, but think what would happen if we had a huge financial meltdown, where we lost our jobs, we lost all the devices of our society. I mean, these are things that are looming to us right now. Suppose there were a war in which all of the things that we now takes for granted and have.
Well, the
so
transportation, like the
Right.
18-wheelers on our highways and such, just came to a screeching halt.
We'd
Stores
be
will be
in
empty
trouble.
in 72 hours or less.
We'd be in trouble. And so at that point, you're going to be looking around for a place to grow whatever you can grow. Your window boxes, your front yard, your backyard, wherever you can get some water to something and have the climate to grow it. Seeds, another issue that we mention and try to bring to people's minds is that you can buy seeds that are not that are non-hybrid seeds.
So they reproduce year after year.
Right, you can take those seeds at the end of the year or whenever they mature, and you can plant them the next season and they'll reproduce in kind.
And you've got the source of where you can get those
Yes, we
seeds
have
in this
some-
book, several
Some of
sources.
those sources.
Okay.
And the absent that, these hybrid seeds, you take the seeds and plant them the next year and you don't get the same fruit. You get a different plant. And
It's like a mutation.
that's right, it's a mutation. It's not a good way to go for long term.
And see, most people wouldn't know that unless they see this on TV or read it in your book. Now, another subject you have in there is on herbs. And you name a whole bunch of different herbs and their medicinal properties, plus you have diagrams or sketches of the different herbs. So
Yeah,
what's the purpose of that?
Well, here again, we've raised a fairly large family, and we found that some of the things that we go to the doctor for regularly, we really would do better to stay home and just use some old home remedies. And so we've just tried to bring up a few of the old time-tested herbal remedies and how to grow and use some of these time-tested herbs in such a way that you could grow them and use them. It's out of the scope of this book to go into the whole thing about herbs, but you know, some things you can do better by going to the doctor maybe, and some things you're just a little better off to just use your own things, and to know the difference is the big issue, but that takes experience and learning.
Well, to cover some other things that we find in your book, there are diagrams on how to skin a deer properly, how to humanely, shall we say, kill animals, for lack of a better word, such as rabbits. And also, we have different methods for first aid. You've got a lot of first aid covered in the book. And how to raise, like you said, farm animals. And how to, you know, one of the things that I was really surprised at that in your diagram anybody could do is how to protect farm animals from nuclear fallout so that they're protected using a regular barn, metal barn or red barn, wooden barn kind of thing. And let's just share with the audience how you would do that in your diagram in your book. Do you remember that?
Yes. Well, the main issue in protecting farm animals is to keep the fallout off them, if that's possible. And as fallout falls, anytime it is ingested in any manner into the body, it becomes extremely dangerous because it's right on the soft tissues inside, and those organs, and it can be, you know, really death-dealing to the livestock. So the object is to keep it out of their feed and off of their person. And so if you have a place where you can keep them, can confine them for the time that the fallout is actually falling, then that would be a great issue, as well as the feed. You know. If you
Well, the
have,
specific thing I'm talking about is we're talking about a barn, for instance, and then you have a loft, and you had like 2 or 3 layers of hay bales on that loft, and then you had a row of bales of hay going 6 to 8 feet up on the sides around.
Yeah, that's the next issue. The fallout falls on the ground, and this is the same for humans as well. As the fallout reaches the earth, then it continues to radiate from it wherever position it's in. And so if you can
Put distance between
put distance and mass between the animals and the fallout, that's good. And also, if you have a bunch of them, as they just mill around and take different positions around the perimeter, they would be protected by the mass of the other animals from that fallout, which lies on the ground outside of their position. And so, if you have a few of them that can just move around, they protect each other or take turns taking the heat, so to speak. But basically, if you stack like for example, bales of hay around the perimeter inside the barn, and then had some above, that also would provide some protection.
Then you had
some
dirt
small protection
piled on the outside of the barn to create more mass.
That's true. That too would be a big issue.
And this was impressive to me because I never personally thought of saving animals. I just figured, they're dead. That's it. And never dawned on me that it could even be a possibility that you could do that. I guess another way you could do is an underground cave, so to speak, with supports that have 12 to 13 inches of dirt, and herd all the animals underground. That would be a good way to put the mass between them and the ground, right?
That could help as well. It's a huge issue. Logistically, I don't think many people would do the things necessary
Right,
to provide
but
that kind of protection.
Quite honestly, the audience we have, which is throughout Canada, the 13 Western United States, and the Bible Belt, a lot of them are self-sufficient, and
Yes.
they do build those kinds of things. And so we just want to share that with them in case they hadn't thought about their farm animals in that kind of a situation if they're in danger.
For a person, we need about at least 3 feet of packed earth between us and the radiation to be protective in the most likely scenarios in any place where there's a fairly large degree of fallout. So we want right angles so that it can't go through any entrances and get us, and also over the top and every place that it could reach us. It's really more involved than our discussion today, but the book helps out, and we give reference to other textbooks that are very helpful, and we really need to think about that as a possibility, even though it may not be happen right away, but it could happen much more easily than we sometimes would like to think. Another issue that is associated with nuclear events is the very likely possibility of an EMP, electromagnetic pulse event.
Can take out our radios and our computers,
Yes.
things like that.
If we were, for example, if an enemy or an antagonist were to set off a large nuclear weapon configured to maximize its electromagnetic pulse at about 250 or 300 miles over Kansas City, it would essentially cripple our whole entire nation.
So you're saying they detonate the bomb in the air?
In the air. There would be no damage on the ground, or essentially no damage to us that way. But it sends a pulse that's very strong, 50 to 60,000 volts per square meter.
And that takes out computers in cars too, doesn't it?
It collects on anything that conducts electricity, and then goes through that conductor and
Fries it. Yeah. Okay.
Huge
Well,
issue.
one of the last things I want to mention about your book that is very helpful is at the end of each chapter, you have this references of all the different books that you've had in your collection, that you've gotten this information from. So one thing that's really helpful is that the reader can look at those references and see a specific book, and they might want to know more about that. And you've got the author and many times the phone number and the address of where they can get that publication and things of that nature, right?
Yes, that's true. And then today too, we can search the internet. Is a lot huge information thing, but we have many references in the sense of survival.
Yeah. The other thing a consumer needs to know is if you find a book in this book reference that you want to get, always go on the internet to maybe Amazon.com, use books, and you can usually get them, if they're available, for a substantially significant lesser amount of money to help save you in your budget for getting prepared. But this book that we've talked about is so important and so useful and so broad that if I had an underground shelter, and I don't, this would be on the shelf in the library, in the shelter, as a reference book that you would not want to lose or lose track of. You'd want to have that, and makes a great gift for those who think boo-hoo and ha-ha about being prepared for an emergency or food storage. That introduction I told you about really wakes you up as to the possibilities. And one of the faults of society today is we're in March 2007 during this taping, and this last 12 months what we've seen is there was an earthquake in Tokyo yesterday, and Seattle had no electricity for 3 days last winter, and we've seen the tsunami, not the tsunami, the hurricane at Katrina, and where everything was flooded, and then there was the tsunami that everybody's familiar with before that. And what we see as Americans is, number one, it didn't happen to us. so we don't have to worry about it. Number two, it happened to them, but look at all the aid they're getting, so they're getting taken care of in a quick and timely manner. My daughter was living in Seattle during the power outage, and she said for heat, they turned on the gas stove for 3 days and just had the flame going. That's the only way they could heat, and they could only heat the kitchen area, not the whole house. And so they slept in the kitchen area. But let's take an earthquake that we're expecting in the state of Utah, for instance. Gas pipelines are going to be broken. There's not going to be any gas. Electrical wires are going to be down. There's not going to be electricity. Water pipes are going to be broken. There's not going to be any water. And who knows how long, weeks, months, that it's going to take to fix that when this grandiose earthquake that we all know is coming based on scientific studies.
And don't forget the sewer lines either.
Oh yeah, I did. And sanitation is covered in this manual. Several methods for sanitation, whether it's a 5-gallon bucket or a trench, or a bucket with a lid, or just all these different possibilities that you can do. And sanitation is something that nobody likes to think about, which is really sad because you need to plan for it, not just think about it. And dysentery really kills a lot of people when you're in that situation, and you don't want to be dealing with dysentery. You've got enough stress in your life to deal with in an emergency situation. Well, Alan, I think we'll wrap up the talking about this book with going next to your 14-day emergency preparation kit. And what we're going to have him do is, he's got it with him, of course. He practices what he preaches. And he's going to show it to you and start pulling things out of it and just hand them to me to put on the ground, and show you why he's got what he's got and how it fits in a nice compact kit for easy mobility. So let's do that next, okay?
Okay.
All right.
1, 2, 3.
Well, Reg, this is my emergency kit. It also happens to be my backpack, and I decided years ago that for my family we would do some backpacking, which we did. We took all of our children on some really exciting and fun backpacking trips, but we would try to keep those packs packed all the time. And then in addition to that, we'd have a food pack, which would take us 14 days besides what we had in our packs. So Reg, I'll hand you my pack, and then you can hand me the parts out of it, and we'll talk about them as we go along.
Okay. Now tell them this was slipped onto the outside of your pack, and why you have that. And that these are carabiners,
Okay.
Okay, that's 3, 2, 1.
Well, Reg, first of all, I have a caveat with my pack. When I actually go backpacking, I take a lot of things out of it, and I only take what's necessary for the trip. I don't like to carry any more than I need to. But if I had to leave home and not go back for a while, I want to be able to leave home with enough materials that I can be comfortable and survive and do what I need to do. I usually have a little rope tied to my clip to my pack, and this is really expensive, good climbing rope. I mean, it's not some that you would actually climb with, but in an emergency, I can. There's a lot of things I could do with it, and I would trust my life with it in a very controlled situation. But I have a little of that. I always take a couple of dust masks with me in case there's something where like a fire or something where I'd need to protect myself from that. I have a first aid kit. I always have a first aid kit. It has a few meds in here, as well as the standard Band-Aids. I learned how to suture years ago, and I've done that quite a few times. I shouldn't say that out loud because I guess that's against the law. But sometimes you just get yourself in a situation, and it's better to do that. It's better not to if you don't have to. But you need a few things. You need an anti-diarrheal. You need a little pain medication, and some antibiotic ointment, a few things like that. This is just part of my food. This is actually salt.
Okay.
And light is always important in any setting. I love these headlamps. They're so good. If you get the LED ones, they last a long time. These are just things in the top of my pack. I always have a little cheap rain poncho to go with whatever else I have. I usually have a better one with me, but you have to stay dry in certain circumstances, and that's a big issue. A little plastic shovel costs almost nothing and it weighs almost nothing, but they're really handy to help out with sanitation issues and little water diversion things around your tent.
And you could plant some seeds with one too, right?
That's right. We have to make something clear. This is just an emergency kit that I would take if I had to leave home instantly. Excuse me. It's not, there's a lot more to emergency gear if you're going to be able to retain your house and things around your home. You have to have a drink.
That's okay. 3, 2, 1.
This is, I always carry a little metal cup with me to drink from and to actually eat out of it a lot of times. There's so much usefulness to these. You can heat things in them and so on. So I always have one of those in my pack, and some snack things, some granola bars. Sanitation is always a big issue. A little toilet paper, and we'll talk about that a little later. A little light stick and some liquid soap. I usually have an emergency blanket or two in my pack. I don't use them to depend on them to keep me warm so much, but I use them as a mat or a reflective thing to reflect fire heat back toward me, or to put underneath my tent to give us a little protection against the ground, and it also keeps adds a little heat to the tent. Reflects the heat back up. This is my sleeping bag that I use down to when it's about, I don't know, in the teens, maybe the mid-teens. I'm comfortable in this. It's a down bag. It's very compact and everything, but when you're going to be outside for a long time, you need something a little different than this. Jim Phillips foam clothes is really something I enjoy a lot, and
yeah, Jim's agreed to be on our show to show us how to do that.
that's good. Jim is really very good on that. But in most situations in the summer and down to about 15, 20 degrees, I can stay reasonably uncomfortable in a sleeping bag. This is actually some potassium iodide tablets. These are what you take in the event of a nuclear event when you
want to protect your thyroid, right?
You flood your system with clean iodine so that you don't take up any radioactive iodine. These are very important. You have to know how to use them and when to use them, however. This is a little sanitation kit. It's got soap and a toothbrush and some dental floss. This actually has some cooking oil in it too, which I always have in my kit. I think cooking oil is really important to
Is it for cooking with or for something else?
It's for cooking with.
Okay.
And this is just a little clothes bag. I've got a pair of pants and a shirt and some fresh, clean pair of underwear and some good sturdy socks, a stocking hat. I always have a stocking hat and some gloves with me. They weigh almost nothing, don't take up much space, and I'll tell you, on a cold night or whatever, it's nice to have some a little warmer hat. This is some hardware, and I want to show a couple of things here because I think they're very, very important. I actually have 2 knives in this kit. I've got a little sharpening device here that I can sharpen things with, but this is a fairly good quality lock blade knife, and this is I brought both of them tonight so that we could kind of see both. And this is just a sheath knife. It's a fairly decent quality and has about a 5.5-inch blade. These we don't worry too much about knives a lot, but a knife is absolutely one of the most important things in your emergency kit. You have to have a knife to do so many things. And
kind of way to sharpen that knife.
Yes, I do have a little sharpening device in here. I have a compass. I have some can openers, these little P38 can openers. That's in plastic here. If I can get it out. And demonstrated this. you have to solve the can opening problem some way. You can do it with a knife, but these work really well. And we have some cord and some heavy nylon string here.
And I know she got a whistle in there too.
And we have a whistle in here.
Is that another knife?
No, but I'm going to show you what it is.
Okay.
A compass is valuable in many, many instances. Sometimes it doesn't make any difference, other times it makes a lot of difference. A whistle, even if you can't whistle or can't scream, when I get cold, I can hardly talk. I can't whistle because my face freezes up, but I can always blow a whistle and make a lot of noise. Many times that's the difference between getting found and not. I also have a little multi-tool here. It has pliers and screwdrivers, and that's a great thing to have along with you also. Fire is a very important issue. I have a lighter, some candles, some matches in waterproof containers. This is actually a little saw that is pretty neat, a little lock blade saw. It'll saw small branches.
You got a light stick in there.
I have a light stick in here and some little, I actually have some fire starting material here too. These little tabs, you can get various kinds of them at surplus outlets, and they're very effective. If you have a hard time starting a fire, you can light one of these and get some tinder. By the way, you should really practice starting fires. People don't understand how hard it is to start a fire, especially if it's a little damp and a little wet. One time I took my boys, they were just young, but I had, I don't know, there were 4 or 5 of them there, and we went out on a cold winter day, and it was very damp. We went out into some cedars, and I let them try to start a fire. This is before they were too big, they weren't really scouts yet. And we used a whole box of matches to the last match, and then I used it, and we finally started a fire. This is a magnesium and flint and steel. These are helpful in starting fires too. Learn how to use those, and they work really well. This is a ground pad. It's a self-inflating foam pad, which gives you a little protection from the cold in the ground, and also gives you a little bit of comfort, which is not such a bad idea. You need to address that in some way. There are some you can get for $6 or $7, up to 106 or 7, and the cheap ones work very well too. This is a cooking kit. I have a pan in here, and some utensils, and these are really important if you're going to heat anything. You can make a soup or a stew. And that's kind of the way these things happen when you don't have a lot of conveniences. You just kind of make it everything in a pan.
I've noticed that you kept a lot of these in individual bags, and that helps on the organization, right?
Try to keep them organized. This is actually a little chair. It's a self-inflating pad that turns into a chair, and that's just kind of a little comfort item for me. This is a windbreaker, just a lightweight, but it does give some rain protection, but a lot of wind protection. And that's helpful if I have something. I have a little fleece jacket that I carry in my pack as well, and the two of them could keep you warm in some pretty rough weather. This is a backpacking stove, and you can, here again, you can spend a little or a lot. There are a lot of fuels available. The little butane ones that they have now are very, very good. This one will run on almost any liquid fuel, diesel, gasoline, white gas.
Not propane.
Not propane.
Okay.
But anyway, this is, and this will be just, it's very powerful. It'll cook just like your stove at home almost. It'll really do fast. There's a little red bottle in the bottom there.
Yes.
And in order to run this stove, I have to have some fuel. And so I always carry a bottle or two of fuel with me. In this case, I happen to have 2. Okay, this is a food pack that I carry. This will take me for about 2 days. I have some oats and rice and honey and some kind of basic things in here. And I always carry this along with me. I also have some freeze-dried meals, and we'll show you some more of those in just a second here.
And these are listed in your book as far as things to pack like.
And of course, water is a huge issue. And I have this big Nalgene bottle, and in there, Reg, there's a water filter. If you want to pass that out to me, that's it right there. Yeah.
I have one of those.
Now this is an MSR Mini Works, and this is a pretty good filter. There are lots of great filters on the market now. This one I can screw off the bottom of this water filter and screw it onto my Nalgene bottle, and I can throw this into the pond or stream, and I can pump water and get it clean while I'm watching the sunset. This is a labor-intensive effort, and one that you need to practice on and learn how to use your equipment. But it's very important because you have to have water, and you have to have the means. You not only take water with you, but you have to make sure that you have a way to make water safe. We've talked about that earlier. This also is a little flexible water container. I can actually hang this up in a tree in the day, and this black, it'll warm it up, and I've got a little shower head on here that I can take a shower with, or I can just turn this up and kind of carefully get wet and then wash up and rinse off afterwards. Or I could just put water in it that I've filtered and have a way to store it. This is a bigger device for sawing. It's actually a little saw. It has a blade in here that comes across, and it's just like a bow saw. And this is big enough so that you can get into a pretty good log and do good with it. Okay, this is my tent, and I carry this in my pack too. This is a two-man tent. I've done a lot of miles with this tent, and it provides good protection and keeps the rain off you and moisture and so on.
Well, that's about it.
So that addresses some of the issues. If you could hand me that big satchel there. What I've done with all my family is that we have our packs, and then we also have a food bag. So every person in the family has a food bag. And let me just show you some of the things that we have in here. I've got a lot of freeze-dried backpacking meals in these, and I also have some MREs. Everybody, I think, is familiar with what MREs are. So I have some of those. I always try to take a little rice with me, basically, which is in my other food pack that I just showed. And the rice and an MRE does really well for me. I do that a lot. Things like some macaroni and cheese. And a few desserts, a little bit of sweet stuff to sweeten up the thing. And so in our food bag, we have enough food to take us for about 2 weeks, at least 14 days.
Put that in your lap and just let them see the size of it.
This is the size of it, right here. And so we could put the pack on our back, and we could carry this out with us.
Or carry it like a suitcase if you want.
Or carry it like a suitcase, just hold it, and that way we can leave with both things. I also brought a little water container tonight because to highlight the need for water. And if I were going in my car and just throwing things in, I would, in addition to that, take as much water as I could carry with me conveniently. There are two more things that I'd like to highlight. Of course, one of them is you need a little reference book. Doesn't hurt to take that along. That's a good idea. Some games to play to break the monotony or the troubled time.
Relieve stress.
Relieve stress. Very good. We may have sacred books that mean something to us, and this is one that means something to me, and I love to read it. A Bible or other scriptures that you'd like to read. And then here's something that I absolutely wouldn't want to leave home without, and that's a shovel. I know that a shovel seems pretty basic and archaic to many of us, but the uses for this are so many. I can't even think of a situation where if you really had to leave home, you wouldn't want to take a shovel with you. So that's a look at the issue. Don't be discouraged if you don't have all these items. Some of the things that I've shown you here are quite expensive, and it may take some people years to accumulate those things. If you don't have that, if you get caught in a situation, what I've always told people is to, if you don't have anything else, I mean, you can start very simple. You can start with a bucket or a duffel bag or whatever and try to work up to a good emergency kit. In the case that you don't have that ready, go to the cupboard and take everything out that you can get in one swipe and throw in a couple of extra clothing items. Throw them in the middle of your bed, pull up the corners, and walk out of the house with Santa Claus style with a bag full of whatever you can carry. There are a couple of other issues that I think are just supremely important. One of them is footwear. Sturdy shoes are just so very, very important. It's really a great thing, and everybody can afford to have a good pair of shoes, I think, hopefully. And that's one of the foremost preparedness items in my mind. There's also the issue of your special needs, such as medications or things that you would need, personal items, and also personal papers. Personal papers is a long list of things that you may want to have copies of: bank accounts, numbers, records that are very important, and you can have copies of those in a folder or something that you can grab if you need to leave home. It's quite a complicated thing. There's lots to think about, but I think at least the basics of food and water and sanitation and protecting yourself by clothing, whatever time of year it is, you've got to have the very first thing that you're going to deal with is the exigency of whatever kind of a situation you're in. If it's 20 below zero outside, you're not going to go out in your shirt sleeves. If it's snowing or raining or something, you need to have protection from whatever is occurring outside.
Okay.
2, 1.
So that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot of good stuff, and I hope you give us a call at this name, address, phone number, and get The Sense of Survival by J. Allen South. I want to thank you for your time today, and hope you get prepared. You don't have to do everything you've seen, but hopefully it'll give you some ideas so you can be better prepared today than you were tomorrow. Thanks and God bless. Good night, everybody.
Tackle as he goes across the middle for a pickup of about 17 yards out to the 43-yard line. A nice first down.